here we are at the end of the very first Information Development World 2014 in San Jose, the very first place where we had technical writers, marketing and information, and product developers all in the same room. What's your takeaway?
Well, I think my takeaway is I'm surprised that we were right. That's the first thing. I mean, I had a hunch we were right. That product content that comes from all the different departments is certainly incongruent most of the time, and it confuses the customer. But I didn't know if we would be able to attract the kind of people that we hoped we could. And after 347 people came through the store, I'm pretty confident that we were spot on with that. So I feel like this is the beginning of the conversation about how do we unify all the content that comes from brands so the customers can feel like we respect them.
Yep. It reminds me of Sarah's keynote today where she was, I love them, and now I don't love them quite so much because they don't love me quite so much. There was an incongruence of the pre-sales information where she was feeling the love, and after she made the purchase where she couldn't find how do I fix this? I agree with you.
And I think this is important because we're starting to recognize that post-sale content, the kind of content that you typically receive after you buy a product or service, and all the other surrounding content, it needs to have a common feel or it seems kind of schizophrenic. The customer doesn't know why it's different, and quite frankly, I don't either. It doesn't seem, I know why. In a perfect world, it's because we organize our companies around departments, and we've just always done it that way. So in the perfect world, we would break down those silos. And we've talked about silo busting for a long time, but I don't think we've talked about it from the perspective of unifying the people. I think we've only talked about the content, and the people have to come together in order for this to work.
I couldn't agree more. In fact, someone said to me, this conference really was at the intersection of all the silos. And I thought,
that's a great point.
Aha.
Yeah, that's a great aha moment.
And it was a great way to put it because we've talked about silos for a while, and we've spoken about them at conferences that focus on technical writing, or conferences that focus on translation, or conferences that focus on some other element of what we do. But never before have we gotten everyone involved in the same place to say, let's have this conversation together.
Right. I think what I also noticed about this conference is that we tend to speak at those other conferences, technical, marketing, and translation and localization, to practitioners. At this conference, we had practitioners and their bosses. They were coming to talk about how do I go and talk to the other bosses. And I think to have at a lunch table, to have translation managers and the director of content and then a support person that is a director of support all talking to each other from different companies. But I think what they've discovered is they're not alone. They all have the same problem, and there have been individuals in each of these companies probably that recognize this, but they've never had other people on their side. And so now they've got buddies that actually believe the same thing, and I think they're going to start, this could be a community of people who want to do better, want to change companies for the long term.
I agree. And it's interesting you say that because as I've spoken to many, many people over the past few days, what I've heard again and again is, I thought I was the only one with this problem. I didn't know that other companies have this problem too. And I feel so much better knowing that I'm not the only one and learning what I can do about it.
And I think they also recognize that this might be the beginning time. Not that we were the first person ever to think of this concept, but I think ideas like this take time to spread. And we finally got enough people together. And in fact, when we started to plan this conference, we questioned whether we might be ahead of the curve. Just because we had a good idea doesn't mean it would work. And I was afraid, what happens if only 20 people show up? Sure, we would have a valuable conversation between all of them, but then we would think maybe we are the only ones that have this problem, and everybody else is perfectly happy with the way that they're doing it.
Absolutely, and never did I expect for the first year that we would get so many interested people and so many conversations going, whether it's at lunch or at the cocktail reception or in between sessions or within the sessions through questions that people are asking.
Sure, and I think the other thing is there are conversations going on external to this that we can't see. For example, we know that over 300 people watched our live broadcast of the opening and keynote speakers each day. And I think that's a good indicator that there's some additional interest, and they just weren't able to be here for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But without a social component, and I know our sponsor Bright Talk is going to add one so that we can see what people are talking about that are remote to the in-person event.
Right.
But without that, we don't really know what they're talking about. But I've got a pretty good hunch that they're saying, we're not alone.
I agree.
So maybe this is the overarching message here, is that if you feel like you have a similar concern, you wonder, why should our information be different from department to department? The answer is, it doesn't have to be. And you're not alone. And there are other people that want to fix this problem.
That's correct. And I think another emphasis I saw is the notion that there's a customer. In fact, in one of the keynotes this morning, Lee gave him the name Josh. And there's a person there who's going through an entire experience from beginning to end, and your silo is not the only part of Josh's experience, that you really need to follow Josh and have an appreciation for Josh from the very beginning to the very end.
And that brings up the subject of customer touch points. I think that sometimes being in isolation, we don't realize that we're creating content for a customer that at one point in their customer journey, they experience. We think we know when they experience it. Turns out we're not so good at that. I learned that post-sale content can impact a sale, which we knew. But I learned that other companies actually are measuring this, and they're starting to figure out that people are looking online to decide, is this company going to provide me with a great experience? Will it be better than the experience I already have?
And is it worth the move?
Why change if you're just going to get the same crappy content?
Exactly. The same crappy experience and the same crappy content. That's very true.
So we exist to help people avoid the crappy content syndrome.
Crappy content syndrome.
I think we just invented something else.
I think we did.
Next year we'll have another conference.
Crappy content syndrome.
No, avoiding
the
crappy content syndrome. We've got our theme for next year.
That's it.
I can't wait.
We
just have to figure out where you're going to meet us. Maybe at Information Development World 2015.
Woo.
Oh, I can't wait.
I can't.
Oh, thank you. I had a blast. That was so much fun.